Hello and welcome to a new episode of Paper Lantern History with Samyukta Nair. Now, I'm sure you're wondering what is this motley collection of papers that I'm showing you? Well, I just want you to know that this is a collection of magazines from the mid-20th century. This collection belonged to my grandmother and possibly partly to my great-grandmother also. And since my collection deals with history, I thought it would be very interesting to show you guys what some magazines, dress patterns, articles, and advertising looked like in around the 1960s. So, we will go page by page. So, some products like Vim, we still see used in Indian households today. We can see the difference, the historical difference in, of course, the clothing, the makeup, the hairstyles. And of course, these magazines are far more illustration heavy than the magazines which you get today, which use a lot more photographs. Here you can see Borrolene House, Calcutta. Now I'm showing you my very own tube of Borrolene, which is very much manufactured in the 21st century. But yes, this goes to show that certain products are eternal in the Indian market. Here are some, they look like cooking instructions, how to plate and dish up vegetables, which is again not something you see very often in magazines these days, but probably you could find some YouTube channels that deal with these. More advertisements from the 1960s. I absolutely love these illustrations. I mean, these are so rare. You don't get these kind of vintage illustrations anymore in magazines, and I just find them so beautiful. Articles on flower arrangement. Flower arrangement is such a lost art these days. I mean, who does this anymore? But it is just something so aesthetic and so beautiful. More articles. This is very clearly post-independence. You can see people in Nehru caps. Calcutta Horse Show. More flower arrangements. Then 1960s home decor. In fact, in our old house, we had some furniture which looked a bit like this and a kind of similar flower arrangement. So that is not off the mark at all because that house was set up in the 60s or 70s. This paper is so old, it's literally crumbling in my hands. So I need to be very careful with how I handle it. One more advertisement. So this is actually from the Femina. Now the Femina is a very popular Indian magazine which is very much in circulation today. Here you can see the subscription rates of Femina in the 1960s. And back in the day, Sri Lanka was known as Ceylon. Kolkata was Calcutta. Mumbai was Bombay. The editor was Dr. K.D. Jhangiani. The date, February 9th, 1968. I don't think this soap is even available in India anymore, but during independence and before independence and even after that, using this kind of very Indian iconography and names for products, for beauty products was very common. In fact, a lot of beauty products and especially things like Woodward's gripe water and stuff had pictures of Indian gods and goddesses because they were essentially British products which were manufactured and marketed towards an Indian audience. And so in order to make them more appealing and to give them a kind of stamp of approval, a lot of very traditional Indian iconography and names were used. And French, another brand we find very often in Indian supermarkets today, mainly in terms of hair removal creams. Those days they existed as cleansing milks. I don't know if hair removal creams existed in the 1960s, but yes, this brand is definitely one of those that has made it into the 21st century. A tonic for all ages. It doesn't say exactly what ingredients this tonic has, which makes it sound a little suspect to me. For poorly and improperly nourished babies and adults, that is very vague. Here's a watch ad. And again, this is a very classic, very, very classic watch. In fact, a lot of the old HMT watches are also made around this kind of design. So it's lovely to see this kind of watch. Any car. I doubt if these are available today, or even if the brand exists, it might not be under the same name. But it's interesting to note that over here also this watch is sold with the tagline, "The nicest way to say I love you." And very recently, Titan brought up an advertisement which again showed a man gifting his wife a Titan watch, as if to gift a Titan watch was the way to say I love you. So it looks like something hasn't changed across the decades. How to paint your own sari. This is very interesting. But in this digital age, I'm not very sure if people do things like this anymore, or even if they do, they must be hardcore hobbies. I am honestly surprised at the number of pharmaceutical advertisements you have in a ladies' magazine. Aspro. It appears to be some sort of pain relief / aspirin substitute. Yeah, headache, body ache, flu. It seems to be some sort of paracetamol or painkiller. Mermaid Foam and Sunita. Wow, bras back in the day were just 7 rupees. Now they are ridiculously expensive. And most people update their lingerie closet just maybe once a year, if at all, because it is so insanely expensive these days, especially good quality lingerie. But then again, the cost of living has gone up a lot and inflation has to be taken into account. Mermaid Foam, this name is quite familiar. I think there's a brand that still exists called Maiden Foam. I'm not sure if they're part of the same company. Of course, torches were a huge thing. Nowadays, not everybody has individual torches because most of our mobile phones have torches. But it's interesting to see an entire ad for a torch. This is probably not something we see very often. More 1960s interior design. Look at all this color blocking. This is really great. I mean, this magazine is kind of like, a modern day Pinterest page. Some articles. No, this is a short story, I think, written by a subscriber. Some recipes for pickles, soups, more recipes. This is something which you can still see in the modern Femina. More interior decor. Look at this. I mean, just look at this illustration. This was obviously very, very modern at the time. This kind of table was extremely modern in the 1960s. And I remember reading some Archie comics which were originally made at that time, which had very similar looking furniture. And it's absolutely lovely. I think that was supposed to be a scene set in Veronica Lodge's house, and she is of course extremely rich, so it makes sense that she would have the latest kind of furniture in her house. More advertisements for embroidered fabrics. Makes sense since a lot of people used to get their clothes tailored back in the day. While people still do that, there is much more fast fashion and ready-made fashion available nowadays in India. And on the very next page, we have an ad for a Singer sewing machine, because again, a lot of people did their own sewing at home. Singer service Merit sewing machine. That's great. That's really amazing. I wonder if these things are still available. I mean, sewing machines by Singer and brands like Brother are still available, but I wonder if this particular model is still available. Then fashion jewelry. Again, this is something which doesn't change, and these kind of advertisements still do appear in ladies' magazines because some products are evergreen. More recipes. More recipes with very cute illustrations and egg jokes. Hello, egghead, you make me boil. Such an egocentric. Come fry with me, Egbert. Oh no. These egg puns are killing me. Rex jelly. Something that children love. Lovely. I think this brand still does exist because I recall seeing something like this in a supermarket in Kerala. So I think it does exist. More recipe pages. Prawn vindaloo. This seems to be mainly seafood and non-veg recipes. Nivea. Now this is a brand. In fact, this iconic Nivea blue tin is still available today. And I think this is something absolutely evergreen that has just withstood the centuries. Terylene. This is something I think which is quite specific to the 1960s. I have not heard of this. More recipes with very lovely pictures. Very, very lovely pictures. An ad for Naco germicidal soap. It can be used as a shampoo as well and a good guard against dandruff. That's great. I mean, nowadays with 5-step and 10-step skincare routines, you have a separate product for each and everything. And here in the 60s is a soap that can remove pimples, blackheads, prickly heat and skin infections and also be used as an anti-dandruff shampoo, which is great. Definitely a multi-purpose product. Then more recipes. I think this was largely aimed towards homemakers. Okay, this is a slightly sexist ad, I think, according to current trends. He's proud of their beauty. They share a family secret. Hazeline cold cream and talc. Okay, so everyone considers the mother and daughter to look like sisters because they use Hazeline. And this man of the family is very proud of their beauty. I don't think an ad like this would fly in the 21st century, but in the 1960s it was perfectly acceptable. More recipes. Philips radios. And the model is none other than Siddheshwari Devi, who was a major Banarasi Gharana singer. It's really nice to see actual musicians being used in these ads. I suppose it's not very different from earphone ads in the 21st century, using actual singers to advertise their products. Now this is very interesting. Not a lot of people know about the Indian Jewish community, and here there is a whole lot of Jewish recipes put up by somebody belonging to the Jewish community. A lot of people don't know that India actually has a significant number of Jews in places like Kerala, Bombay and Calcutta. So this is very interesting. It's nice to see the community acknowledged. Postman oil. I've never ever heard of Postman oil, to be honest. More Rex desserts. Baking powder this time. Oh, I absolutely love this. Fountain pens. So beautiful. And just 6 rupees. With a free ink bottle. Gorgeous. I would absolutely love something like this. As a 21st century fountain pen collector, this absolutely makes me lust for the past. More recipes. Lakme, another Indian brand that is somewhat evergreen and still exists in the 21st century. In fact, it's interesting to note the history of Lakme. Lakme is the French name for the goddess Lakshmi. And there was, I think, a French opera or something by the name Lakme. And post-independence, India wanted to become more independent in their beauty products also, and not have to import so many of them. So they started their own indigenous brand and decided to give it the name Lakme to make it Indian and at the same time more appealing to the urban population, which was more likely to use makeup. So that's a bit of history for you. Lady beware. What is this? More German fibers. A lot of cloth ads. Illustrations for kids' dresses. These are very likely all hand illustrated because computer graphic design was not a thing in those days. So all these illustrations would have been done painstakingly by hand. Farix, baby food. I'm not sure if it still exists under the name of Farix because we have a lot of things like Cerelac and Nestum and all these things existing today. I'm not very up to date on the various baby food brands. But yes, Farix is definitely something that was used in India in the 1900s a lot. It would be cool if it still exists. More little girl styles and fashions. I'm pretty sure my mother had dresses like this. I have seen some of her clothes in our camphor trunks, which have been beautifully preserved by my grandmother. And my grandmother also actually used to refer to these patterns and make clothes for her. So, I mean, I'm very sure that my grandmother was one of thousands of women who did this. This seems to be an article on striking good looks, a soft voice, and pleasing manners make her an attractive person to know. Okay. Eve at home and abroad. Various women from different fields who have achieved. And they are all quite stylish as per this period of time. More children's fashions. And also it is well worth noting that the word gay had just meant happy in this era. I mean, this word would probably not be used in this context in any magazine right now. But yeah, it's interesting to see how the language used evolves and words come to, like, the more, obviously the word gay would have still had that meaning about 50-60 years ago, but it would not have been as widely known to the public because the LGBT community could not be as open as it is today. So, I mean, the word gay obviously means a man who prefers the company of another man over a woman in the 21st century. So it's interesting to note how the dichotomy of words and how their meanings evolve as the decades go by. More girls' fashion, probably the kind of dresses they would wear for birthday parties and such. Striped dresses. More Anne French ads. More fabric ads. More children's fashion. This seems to be ladies' fashion, short dresses for ladies, which would have been quite revolutionary in 1960s India. So that is the end of this magazine. I apologize for its not very good condition because it is nearly 60 years old. And I want to show you a couple of other items before we end this video. This is something I got from an antique shop in Chennai. It is not from the 60s, it's probably from the late 80s or early 90s. And I absolutely love the way it looks and this anchor and rope. It's a compass. And I absolutely love things like this. I have kept it safe. I don't use it obviously, but it's something which I absolutely love. It was a little expensive, obviously, since it's an antique and it's in such beautiful condition. But it's definitely something I will keep and treasure. Then this is my great-grandmother's purse from the 20th century. I'm not sure exactly which decade she owned this in, but it's in very good condition. So she probably didn't have it or didn't use it very long. And this is an Omega watch, I think purchased in the 1950s or 60s. This was my grandfather's watch, an Omega Constellation. And And in fact, it's worth noting that the clocks at the Golden Temple in Amritsar are also Omega constellation. They were probably donated by somebody, but yeah, I find the details on this watch so beautiful. This at the back, the clasp, the detailing, it's so lovely. It doesn't work anymore and it's a little cracked with age, so I definitely need to take it to an Omega store and see if they can fix it up and make it in running condition again. Here is a tie-pin. Excuse me, 1 second. A tie-pin with a little golfer on it. Very cute. I think this belonged to my grandfather or my great-grandfather. And a Sea Cadet Corps badge. So my grandfather joined the Royal Indian Navy during World War II, and he must have got this around that time, because this is something from British India, as you can tell from the crown on top. It's definitely pre-independence, so he must have acquired this at that time. So yes, that's it. Those are some, and also yes, I want to talk a little more about this purse. Modern purses they tend to be a little longer, and they have separate compartments inside where you can keep your cards and a separate coin compartment. But these kind of purses had everything in one compartment, because obviously then people didn't really carry cards around. And this kind of thing, this clasp is called a kiss clasp, which was very fashionable at the time, because it looks like the two ends of the clasp are kissing when closed. And it's absolutely beautiful, and this type of purse actually was in style for centuries. So I'm very glad to have something like this as part of my collection. So I hope you enjoyed this video, and I hope you enjoyed going through this magazine and seeing a few historical items with me. And see you in my next video.